know how to pick up granuloma because TB is, if I can say, national disease, right? It's there everywhere, right? Stellate because for the person who first saw, it looks like a star. It's an irregular granuloma. That's all. It is not well defined, so it's called stellate granuloma. Fine. Okay. Next question. Again, it's an question. It's an IBQ, but I'm not having an image. This is again to reinforce that you can solve a question without image also. Tell me the answer. Diagnosis here is a simple one. 25-year-old, routine examination, 6 foot 5 inches, early diastolic murmur, some problem here. Perfect. The diagnosis is straightforward here. It's Marfan syndrome. Answer? Autosomal dominant, right? It's a very, very simple thing, right? Arrhythmia, just give me 10 minutes. You will never ever worry about pedigree, right? Just 10 minutes. Okay. See, pedigree, I have a rule for pedigree. If you cannot solve a pedigree in 10 seconds, the pedigree is wrong, not you are wrong. You are right. 10 seconds is the time required to solve the pedigree if you know how to identify pedigree. If you take more than 10 seconds, skip the question. The pedigree is undoubtedly wrong, right? We are going to learn pedigree. For learning pedigree, there are few rules. These rules are given by Gregor Mendel, the original person, right? So Mendel's rules is what we are going to learn here. See, for learning Mendel's rules, I want few information which I want you guys to know. I'm sure you know that. What does the symbol stand for? Male, female, men, women, however you want to call it, right? Sure, just 10 minutes, you'll definitely master pedigree, right? When there is a family, always the kids are drawn in the second generation, right? These are the kids. Kids are always drawn in the second generation, fine? If you have solved any pedigree, you must have noticed a pedigree will be most of the time in the form of a triangle. I'm just drawing a random pedigree. It'll be always in the form of a triangle. That's how pedigrees are. And if you have noticed that, you will see 1, 2, 3 written on the corners, or A, B, and C written on the corners. Have you noticed them? A, B, and C, or 1, 2, 3, right? So A, B, and C, or 1, 2, 3 are your generations. I just want you to remember this, that's all. First generation, second generation, third generation, right? What does this symbol stand for? If I make something black, what does it mean? Can I call them the patient is having a disease? Yes. So in other words, can I say the topmost or the first generation here is affected? Yes. Perfect. So now, can I say all the 3 generations here are affected? Am I right in saying that all the 3 generations here are affected? Yes. I just want you to remember this. So when I say all generations are affected, which means at least one person, every generation should be affected. Now, I just remove this. In this pedigree, now it's all generation affected or not? All generations are not affected, right? All generations are not affected here. Perfect. This understanding is enough for me. When I say all generation affected, at least one person every generation, not the entire generation. Clear? Okay. Now I'll go to the rules of pedigree. I have 3 rules and 1 rule for your stupid examiners. Just 3 rules to solve every pedigree, right? And please, if you have a pen and paper, write these rules so that you remember forever. Or I'll give the PDF, take a screenshot, read the day before exam. Fine. So the first rule is always rule out mitochondrial inheritance. The reason why I'm saying rule out mitochondrial inheritance is mitochondrial is non-Mendelian inheritance. What I said was these are Gregor Mendel's rule. You cannot pick up mitochondrial with these rules. First, rule out mitochondrial. The simplest way to rule out mitochondrial is maternal inheritance or paternal, mothers or fathers. Mitochondrial is maternal, right? So if the mom is affected, how many percent of the kids will be affected? I'll come to that also, Aditya. Wait a minute. If a dad is affected, how many percent of the kids will be affected? Mom affected, 100% kids affected. That's mitochondrial. Dad affected, 0% kids affected, right? I'm sure you know this, right? So if you see a pedigree which is falling with this thing, mom 100% kids, dad 0% kids, it's mitochondrial. That's my first rule. The second rule for me here is I'm just going to see whether all generations affected or not. You have to ask this question. Ignore that spelling error. You have to ask this question whenever you see a pedigree. If all generations affected or not. If the answer to this is no, I am dealing with an recessive disorder. Okay. I have only two recessive disorder. That's all. In one recessive disorder, only men will be affected. In the other recessive disorder, I'll repeat as so, just give me a second. Both men and women are affected. Okay. Which will have only men affected? X-linked recessive or autosomal recessive? Which will have only men affected? Has to be perfect. Has to be an X-linked recessive. If it's both men and women, it has to be autosomal recessive. Ashutosh, I'm repeating for once. Just listen to me. I just have to look at every pedigree, all generations affected or not. If the answer to this is no, I'm having a recessive disorder. Then I have to look only men are having the disease or both men and women are having the disease. Only men having the disease X-linked recessive, both men and women having the disease autosomal recessive. Simple. That's the first thing. Second, okay. Again, same question. All generations affected or not. Okay. If the answer to this question is yes, I'm dealing with an dominant inheritance. See, dominant inheritance has two things, two questions, not one question. The first question I'm going to ask is there a dad to son transmission? Okay. Listen carefully to what I'm going to say and then answer, but I want everyone listening to this to answer this. Let's assume I'm having an X-linked dominant disorder, which means my X chromosome is abnormal and I'm going to give birth to a son. If I have to give birth to a son, I have to give my Y chromosome, then only the zygote will become a male zygote, right? So is there any possibility as a father, when I have an X-linked dominant disorder, I will transmit that to the son? Yes or no? Ranjana, monocyte is in the blood. In tissue, it's always macrophage. If there is any possibility, I will transmit to the son. Definitely no. Perfect. If there is no dad to son transmission, if the answer to this is no, you are thinking of an X-linked dominant disorder. Like I said, it's not with one question. I have two questions here, right? If the answer to this is no, I'm probably dealing with an X-linked dominant disorder. Probably, right? Next question what I had to ask is, dad is affected, then 100% daughters are affected. Again, I'm going to ask you a simple question. Same thing. I'm having an X-linked dominant disorder. I have an affected X chromosome. I'm going to give birth to a daughter. If I have to form a female zygote, I have to give my X chromosome. So can I say, if I have an X-linked dominant disorder, how much ever girl babies is going to come from me will always have the disease? Because to form a girl baby, I have to give my affected X chromosome, right? Yes, so it'll have a disease. So if the answer to this is yes, if all 100% daughters are affected, the simple thing is it's X-linked dominant disorder. If the answer to this is no, it's an autosomal dominant disorder. I will repeat this flowchart again, right? I'll repeat this flowchart. The best part is when you apply. I told 10 seconds, right? It'll take less than 10 seconds. Right? If all generations are affected, if the answer to that is yes, I'm dealing with a dominant disorder. The next question is there a dad to son transmission? If the answer to this is no, probably an X-linked dominant disorder. The next question is, when the dad is affected, all 100% daughters are affected. If the answer to this is yes, which means it is confirmed in X-linked dominant. If the answer to this is no, it's a confirmed autosomal dominant disorder. Fine. Okay. Akash, if you're not understanding something, tell me. I'll reply for sure. Okay. That's how it is. Fine. Just it's a little bit of barrier. We'll definitely get through it. Okay. Perfect. Like I said, there are only 3 rules for a normal person to understand pedigree. But unfortunately, we are sitting for NEET PG exam, sadistic examiners, right? I have to know about Weiling disorders also. This came once in INICT. I'll tell you why I did not know Weiling disorder. I'll tell you why I need not know Weiling disorder. Weiling is otherwise called as whole andric. Andric is men, whole is entire, right? Whole is entire and andric is men. If every male is affected and if only men are affected in the pedigree, no female at all, then it is an Weiling disorder, right? Then it is a Weiling disorder. The reason why I said it's not required is there are two common Weiling disorder. One is excess growth of hair in the ear. Do you go to a doctor or you go to a barber shop? You shave it off. No one is going to say, let me do a genetic analysis and see what's happening, why the hair is growing. The second common disease of Weiling disorder is your azoospermia, right? Azoospermia. In azoospermia, there'll be no family to draw a pedigree. I need not worry about it. But still, your examiners ask this pedigree in an exam. Please don't become like them, right? Please never become like them. This is not required for an undergraduate. The first three is required for undergraduate, right? I hope you have written it down. We'll now look at pedigrees and we'll see if we can solve it. Fine. Okay. Okay. Put your fingers on your keyboard. I want you to answer quickly. All generations in this pedigree affected or not? It's simple. All generations are affected, right? All are affected. Then I'm going to think of an dominant disorder. The second question in dominant disorders is there a dad to son transmission? There's a dad, no son transmission. There's a dad, no son transmission. If there is no dad to son transmission, probably not finalized, probably an X-linked dominant disorder. The next question was whenever the dad was affected, is all 100% of the daughters affected? The dad is affected, is 100% daughters affected or not? No, 100% daughters are not affected. So the second question answer is no, means my diagnosis autosomal dominant disorder. This is the most difficult pedigree you will get. This also you can finish in 10 seconds. If I know what I'm doing, you can diagnose in 10 seconds. That's all. Answer is simple. It's an autosomal dominant disorder. Like I said, for dominant pedigree, don't go with the first answer. Both the questions should be answered. Only then you have to go to the answer. Fine. Next pedigree. Again, it'll take only 10 seconds. Fine. All generations affected or not? No. The first generation is not affected. So it's an recessive disorder, right? Both men and women or only men? Both men and women. So it's an autosomal recessive disorder. 10 seconds. That's all. It will be only 10 seconds, right? Just simple. It's autosomal recessive disorder, right? Next question. All generations affected or not? Not affected. So it's a recessive disorder. Only men or both men and women? It is only men. So it's an X-linked recessive disorder. That's all. And it's 10 seconds. It should be done in 10 seconds. If it's not done in 10 seconds, you are right. The examiner is wrong. Be super confident, right? Next. All generation affected or not? No. Dominant or recessive? Recessive. So both men and women or only men? Both men and women. So it is autosomal recessive, right? Okay. Amazing. So this is where we will make a mistake when you don't follow the rules. What was the first rule? I want you to make a mistake. Make a mistake. We will learn for sure. What's the first rule of the pedigree analysis? Look for mitochondrial inheritance. If you miss the first rule and if you follow the flow chart, you will make mistakes. Don't skip rules. Don't skip steps. Mom affected, 100% daughters affected. Dad affected, none affected. Mom affected, 100% daughters affected. Now tell it loud and clear. What's the inheritance? It is mitochondrial inheritance. Perfect. So never ever skip rules. It's always the first thing I have to rule out is mitochondrial. Please don't skip rules. If you skip rules, you will end up wrong. The first, just achieve. The way to diagnose mitochondria is look at the mom and dad. Mom, everyone. Dad, none. That's the only thing to pick up mitochondrial inheritance. Fine. Okay, perfect. Now tell me, how many of you can confidently diagnose all the pedigree in less than 10 seconds? I hope you can. Like I said, read the rules the day before the exam. I hope pedigree comes in the exam. You will smile. It'll cheer up your mood. You will know that you got a one right answer, and then entire exam will change from that time. Fine. You will definitely know it, but read the day before the exam. Fine. Perfect. So one part of genetics is more or less sorted, right? Great. Okay, we'll go to the next question, right? We'll go to the next question. Amazing, just as if. Someone asked me this, right? How do I remember disorders? You must have definitely remember mnemonics for disorder, right? I'll go with logic again. See, logic any day supersedes memory. Logic any day supersedes memory, fine? For an autosomal dominant disorder, there are few clues. Every cancer syndrome will be dominant. You tell any cancer syndromes, right? Any cancer syndrome, neurofibromatosis, tuberous sclerosis, Peutz-Jeghers syndrome, FAP, any damn cancer syndrome will be dominant only. Retinoblastoma, Leaf-Romney syndrome, that's one. So taken care of, right? Polycystic kidney disease, structural protein, and polycystic kidney disease presents in early age group or later in life. Autosomal dominant polycystic kidney disease presents early in life or later in life. Later in life. Almost every dominant disorder presents late in life. That's second clue, right? If there's a late presentation, it has to be a dominant disorder. Marfan's presents late. Ehlers-Danlos presents late. ADPKD present late. That's a clue. I can take care of this. Familial adenomatous polyposis, cancer syndrome. Late presentation. Von Willebrand, late presentation. You must have read that it presents in pregnancy, late presentation. Marfan's, late presentation, late presentation. Osteogenesis imperfecta, it's structural protein. That's a third clue, right? Achondroplasia, structural protein. There are only three things I want you to remember for any dominant disorder. Every cancer syndrome is dominant. Any genetic disease which has a late presentation is dominant. If a mutation is in structural protein like collagen, dominant disorder, right? So these are three cardinal rules to remember dominant disorder. Don't try to memorize. It's impossible to memorize. 19 subjects. I have a very tiny place for memory. And there are lots of personal things to remember as well, right? Why to waste that? We'll go with logic here. Duchenne's muscular dystrophy is like X-linked recessive disorder, right? Now I'll come to it. It's a good question. It's a sarcolemmal protein, right? It's an X-linked recessive disorder. See, there are few diseases you already know the inheritance because you must have read the disease in detail. So that will not come to this. If there's an unknown syndrome coming, use these to easily solve them, right? That's one. Second, we'll go for recessive. Again, these are tables from your Robbins. Again, I'm telling an easy way to remember. That's all. BGS cancer syndrome means like neurofibromatosis, von Hippel-Lindau, BRCA syndromes. All these are cancer syndromes. Fine. Okay. AR. The first clue is congenital. If it presents at birth, it has to be recessive. All inborn errors of metabolism is recessive. I'm not saying autosomal recessive, autosomal or X-linked recessive. Every inborn error of metabolism is recessive. Anything with an enzyme defect will be and should be recessive. RPR, polycystic kidney disease, is autosomal dominant and autosomal recessive. Autosomal recessive presents at birth, so it is recessive. Fine. Okay, that's third. If you know a disease which has carrier state, I'm sure you know few diseases with carrier state, right? Sickle cell anemia, carrier state is there. Thalassemia, carrier state is there. Can I call it recessive? Recessive. Autosomal or X-linked, we will know when we read the disease. That's all. Right? Again, enzyme. This are recessive, not primarily enzymes, but when we read Wilson's and hemochromatosis, in that chapter, you will first read it is recessive. Sickle and thalassemia, do they have carrier state? They do. Enzyme. We can solve everything. Remember this. Remember the three things: present at birth, enzyme defect, carrier state. These are clues for recessive disorder. See, because I'm not saying mnemonics are bad. But when you create a new mnemonic for an exam, you will forget. The mnemonic should be read from MBBS time. Like those things you'll remember. Sister Louis powder face often attracts medical students. Those things you'll remember. Other things is a bit difficult to remember. So try to go with logic. Remember this and try to apply this logic whenever you see a disease. You'll be right most of the time. Right? That's one of the clues to remember dominant.